All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Patrick Marlow. This is Derrick Steele and Tom Perez. We're all from IPSoft. This is actually my first time here at Talkabot. These guys have been coming here for a while now. My role at the company that we're going to be talking about today and our product is Director of Engineering. So I'm responsible for all cognitive and autonomic technologies at our company. Derrick Steele is a cognitive implementation engineer, so he'll be talking to you about how we implement Amelia, which is our virtual worker. And then Tom is actually a cognitive technical architect. He's responsible for a lot of vetting of use cases and talking to our clients and understanding what their needs are, as well as a lot of data analytics on the back end. So again, what we're going to talk about today is Amelia. We're all going to kind of work through this presentation as quickly as we can because we have a lot of content. So IPSoft as a company has been around for about 18, 19 years. The whole core component about what we wanted to do as a company was to solve the Turing test, right? Like anyone that really jumps into AI goes like, oh, I really want to solve that. One day I want to have a robot and a person sitting on stage. I want to solve this thing, right? Our CEO, went on this venture 19 years ago thinking this is going to be easy. I'll have it knocked out in 18 months. And here we are 19 years later, right? So one of the things that we started to do is get really, really good at machine-to-machine interactions and human-to-machine interactions. But quickly we found that there was a massive gap in human-to-human interactions, right? So it's easy to take some input from a machine and do something with it. It's easy to let machines talk to one another and they can do things all day long, right? But what happens when I need to talk to Derrick and I need to get information from Derrick and I need to do something with that information, right? It's hard. And as Sam pointed out, the way that we speak and articulate as humans, the colloquialisms that we use, they're very difficult, right? It's really difficult to understand all those things. So at the core of what we want to do at IPSoft is really to free up people from the mundane tasks that they do every day in their lives, talking about where can I find a bar, looking at different monitoring systems, things like that, and allow humans to do higher level thinking tasks while our chatbots, our virtual workers can do kind of the mundane, the everyday stuff. So again, virtual workers in this particular scenario with Amelia are really addressing kind of the human-to-human interactions. And where we're targeting these for our particular virtual worker, Amelia, is in the enterprise space. So this isn't necessarily a thing that you can just go download and play with online. It's not an off-the-shelf type of thing, but this is more geared towards the Fortune 500 in the US, the Global 2000, to say you are a large enterprise. You have a lot of people doing a lot of things and call centers. How can we build an enterprise level bot to interact with your customers, with your internal employees, things like that, and actually do tasks for them that humans are doing today, right? And not purely syntactically, but in a natural language type interaction, right? So a lot of those level 0, level 1 tasks, increasing into level 2 tasks. Again, this is more of the salesy piece, the kind of driving down cost savings and things like that. But when you really think about it, there are large companies, very large call centers, thousands of people, high turnover, long training rates, things like that. So if we could build and craft the perfect worker, right, what would that look like? If you had an unlimited digital labor force, what would that look like, right? So when we start to go into this journey of kind of teaching and training Amelia to do particular things, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, right? So first off, we really have to sit down and talk to the clients and say, what do you want to hire Amelia to do? So there's a large misconception around AI and machine learning and all the other buzzwords on the market today. So I like to equate it to what the cloud was 10 years ago. Everyone's going to the cloud, everything's in the cloud. I got to get to the cloud as quickly as possible. What does that even mean? Right? So same kind of thing with AI today. What is cognitive? What is machine learning? What does artificial intelligence even mean? What do you want to solve? What's your problem? What's your pain point? So that's what we really need to extract from the client first when we go into these interactions. Are you, diving into any solutions today? Are you using chatbots? Are you using any kind of NLP or machine learning engines? If you are, what are those things? Are they solving your problems? Where are the gaps? Those types of things. So understanding the problem that the customer is trying to solve so that we can properly lead them down the path into training Amelia the way that they need to solve their big problem. And always know that there's going to be unknown unknowns, right? So we can sit down with all your subject matter experts and we can do all the sessions in the world, but ultimately, once we dive into it, we're going to hit those walls where we just go, wow, I didn't even realize that that was a thing, you know? And I'm sure you've got a lot of like process experts in your companies and things like that that say, hey, I've got everything mapped out in Visios and ontologies and the whole thing. And what you'll really find, which is fascinating, and we found in our project, is that humans tend to fill in the gaps in processes without even really thinking about it, right? So you'll have a great process expert, they'll write the best process ever, and then it'll get to a point where the human will go like, wow, that's not what he really meant, I'll just jump over here. That's a break in process, but bots don't know to make that jump, right? So we have to really understand that those things can happen and will happen. So during requirements gathering, talking with stakeholders, again, the subject matter experts, people that know what it is that you're going to be training your bot to do. So it's kind of like the conundrum of you know, marketing people versus developers, right? So if you let marketing people drive the product, and then the developers have to go, wow, I can't build that. It's not technically possible, right? You get differing, you know, expectations. The same is on the flip side. If you give something to a developer and you say, hey, build this because I think this is the way this should go, they're going to build it in what makes sense to them, not what makes sense to the customer experience, right? Or the actual business process. So these are things that you actually have to talk through. Confirming pain points, obviously, understanding that there is no magic bullet. If everyone's kind of dabbled a little bit in machine learning or AI today, you'll probably hear people say like, oh, so you can just drop, you know, volumes of PDFs and Word docs and your bot can just read an encyclopedia and know instantaneously everything that there is to know in this world. We're not there yet, right? And I think that Hollywood has not done us justice, right? So they've definitely muddied the waters. So when we walk into meetings, it's a lot of demystifying what it is that cognitive and AI is today, so that we can get to the true, you know, meaning to say, hey, we can do really cool things with this, but let's be real. Let's be pragmatic about what this really is, and it's not Ex Machina, and it's not iRobot, and it's not Asimov yet, right? Use cases. So one of the last things, what we really get down to in scoping is understanding what's a good use case, right? So again, going back to the idea of what do you want to hire your digital worker to do? A good use case is typically limited in scope. You'll find that clients will come right in the door and they'll shoot for the moon, right? Just right away, just like, I want to solve this really, really complex, difficult problem because it's the thing that costs me the most money and we should be able to solve it right away. And the thing is, maybe they're not digitally mature already. They're not even using a chat system. They haven't even written down any ontologies. They don't actually have any business process today. So they're going from, you know, the Stone Ages where they don't have fire, and they're over here asking you for a Weber grill. You know, and you've got to learn that there's a path to growth along the way. So understanding and teaching your clients to say that, hey, let's take baby steps. Let's do a crawl, walk, run. Let's pick something that's within a limited scope, something that we can ease into so that you understand how to teach and train and interact with an artificial intelligence. Making sure that your use cases are well understood by everyone. So that means sitting down in the room with both the developers, the subject matter experts, the clients, and everyone sitting there nodding their heads going, yes, this is what we want, versus getting 6 months down the road and going like, that's not what I designed, right? So it's very important to make sure that everyone's a part of the project at all times. And making sure that these use cases that you're picking truly are issues that they have in their environment, right? Are they pain points? Do they occur frequently? Are they high volume? Because ultimately, when you build an enterprise level you know, digital worker, you want to ensure that that's solving a problem for them on the back end, right? Things not to do when collecting information from clients or allowing clients to do. Don't do this. If a client comes to you and says like, hey, I've got all this great data written down. It's in this cool spreadsheet that I built. And it looks like this. We got to go back to the drawing board, right? The way that we teach and train Amelia is the same way that you would teach and train a human in your environment today. That means, do you have process flow diagrams, Visios? Do you have chat transcripts? Do you have recordings? Do you have things that I, as a human, could listen to and interpret and decipher and kind of crunch on and go like, okay, I can kind of understand that. Those are the same types of knowledge artifacts that we've got to give to people like Derrick and like Tom, so they can kind of chew through them and say like, all right, I can teach Amelia to do this particular process versus here's a million Word docs and just learn them all right now and you'll just be a genius, won't you, Amelia, right? So just things to think about. Things that you should do, Derrick will cover that now, so. Yeah.
All right, so my name is Derrick Steele. Again, I'm a cognitive implementation engineer with IPSoft, and I'm going to talk about the design process that we go through and the implementation process when we're talking with a client. And this applies to Amelia, but I think this is going to apply generally to most bot platforms as well. So the first thing you have to ask yourself is, who's your audience? Who are you building this for? IPSoft, we deal with clients from all verticals. So we deal with entertainment companies, people that have internal IT help desk needs. And the way you talk with each of those audiences and you build for each of those audiences is going to be extremely different. So if you're dealing with IT help desk, the language is probably going to be pretty dry, very ABC. These are the things you need to do. But if you're talking with, say, gamers, then the language is going to be very different. There might be a little more slang thrown in. If any of you are on Twitch, maybe you throw in like a Kappa or a PogChamp or something like that. Next thing, when you first introduce your bot to a user, it's important just to say hi. Let your user know you're talking to a bot. They might not know that, and it helps to set expectations, both in terms of what the user can actually expect to get out of the bot and what it can do. Along the same lines, when we build Amelia, there's auto-generated responses that Amelia can provide, but then there's also canned responses that we're building in. And when you're building out those canned responses, it's important to make sure that keeping that conversation going, that those are humanized, that they make sense to the user and to make them feel good, and to keep the conversation moving forward and they feel natural. Additionally, it helps to have multiple responses for the same path. So if a user comes back, one time you might say, what can I do for you today? And the other time you might come back and say, is there anything I can do for you? It's a very small difference, but just having that in terms of interaction makes it feel more human, makes it more likely that the user is going to come back and enjoy themselves. Your bot should also be able to understand different responses. For us, the built-in response pools for yes, no, I don't know, and a host of other responses the user might give, but there's different ways the user might say each of these. So I could say yes is yeah, okay, sure, or something like that. Likewise for no and I don't know. And when you're taking your users down each of these paths, you'll have these built-in slots that you need to fill, but you also have custom ones where maybe asking for a user ID or something like that. And you have to be able to account for those. Also, if the user wants to really, really talk to a human, they're the person they've called up a call center and they're hitting 0 just so they can get to a person, that might be this person here, and they just really want to talk to a human. So if somebody says, give me a human, give them a human as best you can, whether it's through your chat platform directly. If somebody's not available or that's not what your chat platform supports for this particular customer, give them options. Let them call on the phone to somebody, let them email somebody, give them an option, always keep them moving forward. So the next thing I want to cover here is a couple of different ways that we've deployed Amelia. So this is the front end for Amelia with our custom UI. This is for an insurance company. And we have a number of widgets that we can include and customize this to whatever the customer's needs are. But not every customer is necessarily going to want to deploy this. They'll already have their own chat platform and they just want Amelia for the back end. So in that case, we could deploy on something such as Facebook Messenger. And the great thing about deploying on Facebook Messenger is we get to take advantage of all the work that Facebook has done already. So they have plenty of plugins, in this case, Google Maps. So we get to take advantage of that and all the work that they have done. Here we have Skype for Business. And I know some of you might be thinking, Skype for Business, who uses this? It might surprise you, a lot of enterprises actually use Skype for Business. It's just something to keep in mind, whether you're building for Amelia or another bot platform. If you go to a large company, you're going to run into this. Also keep in mind, Skype for Business is not very well documented, so you'll have a fun time trying to implement it. And lastly, we have SMS. Just good old text messaging. This is great for out-of-band access. So if somebody doesn't have access to their computer, doesn't have access to the web, they probably still have a cell phone. They can still probably text message. So it's just another thing, another platform to consider. Again, Twilio makes it super easy to do nowadays. So I'd like to talk a little bit about integration. I already covered the front end stuff. When we work with a lot of companies, they ask us to integrate with ticketing systems, such as ServiceNow or Remedy. And opening tickets is great. For me, I consider that to be table stakes. This is what you should be doing at the bare minimum, is opening tickets. For a lot of the use cases that we deal with at IPSoft. But one of our philosophies that we work by is that we should actually make your worker, do work. It seems obvious, but that's what we should be doing. So leverage the APIs and endpoints that are available to you. If somebody wants to book a flight somewhere, book it for them. Don't just send them an email. Don't send them somewhere else to do that. Just do that for them within the context of the bot itself. So I'm going to hand things off to Tom here, and he's going to wrap it up.
All right, guys. So we're going to talk about production, exciting stuff. But before I start talking about your chatbot's day one, let's talk about your day one a little bit. So think back to your first job, right? Very first job, you're training, you're on your first day. Imagine if someone just put you out there on the floor without any preparation, maybe with a little bit of training. Would you be able to do 100% of your job accurately from the get-go? Probably not, right? So sometimes it doesn't work the way that you hoped it would have. We set targets like we want to be accurate 90% of the time, or we want to have 85% client satisfaction, and we don't necessarily hit that from the start. But that's okay. Actually, that's very exciting, because having unsuccessful chats and conversations that don't go well gives us a place to dig in and optimize services, right? So we don't look at just the wins. More importantly, we look at how we can take corrective action on the losses specifically. So collecting and reviewing data is kind of a laborious task, right? There's a lot of data points that we can talk about when we're looking at a chatbot's performance. One thing that we like to measure in IPSoft is accuracy. So there's two sides to accuracy here. The first is our chatbot able to identify the user's intent, like we've mentioned before in the previous presentation? Are we able to process that utterance and understand what the user's problem is? And the second piece of that is, are we able to go through the entire process to resolve the user's issue? So it's a twofold thing. I mean, besides accuracy, there are other things we want to concern ourselves with too. It's not just technical, if something's working, if it's not. It's about user experience, right? So another thing that we like to collect at IPSoft is customer satisfaction scores, or CSAT. And this could be something as simple as at the very end of the process, we ask, hey, how did we do today? Give us a score of 1 to 3. That feedback can be very impactful. It goes beyond just the technical issues that could happen and into the user experience and the journey through the cognitive platform. So one good example of how we can retool based on this is with the client that we have. Gamers, very interesting, irritated user base at times. They're coming to us with a problem. They're not able to get onto their game. There's some kind of issue going on. And what we do, or what our chatbot does, is it verifies the account and makes sure that the person that's contacting us is actually that person, right? We want to make sure that they're not hackers or trying to compromise the account. But lo and behold, at the very end of this interaction with Amelia, our chatbot, we passed off to an agent, and we asked how we were doing or how we did today. Like, how did we do today, right? And there's a finality there. If we're transferring to an agent and we ask how we did today, that implies that at some point there was a break in the process, right? So we were really surprised, actually, from the get-go that our satisfaction scores are very low. But when we brought this back and we started walking through the user process, thinking like the user, we figured out that by rephrasing the question from how did I do today to how am I doing so far, satisfaction just went through the roof, right? Immediately. From the next day that we started asking that question, we already saw a lift. Because we're telling the user, this isn't the end of your journey. We're going to continue. We're going to get you where you need to go. Don't worry. Sit tight. So obviously, it's an iterative process. The last 2 steps there, you iterate through the data. And I'm going to talk about a little bit of what that data is, right? So there's a lot we can collect here. I mean, I mentioned accuracy. I mentioned client satisfaction. Another big one, if we're talking more on the technical architecture side of things, is average handle time, right? What is the speed that your chatbot is able to complete an interaction from start to finish? And are we able to do that from full contact on first resolution, first contact? There we go. So, but the analysis isn't easy, right? One of the things that we struggled with in the beginning is we started with 120 chats per week with one of our clients. And by last week, we've ramped up to 10,000 a week. So that's a more than 5,000% increase, right? So when we're looking at things like average handle time, thinking outside the box in these metrics, we can say, hey, we ramped up 5,000%. We were able to handle every interaction at the exact same 3-minute time when a human can do it for 6, right? So we're cutting that time already, and we're handling way more than a human could at the same time. So, you know, one of the things that Patrick talked about is working with these clients, sometimes it's hard to quantify the unknown, to talk about the business impact and what could happen with the business after they implement a solution like this. So knowing this information and analyzing the chats, even though it's not always easy, can really help optimizing your platform. There are obviously ways to automate this. I mean, we've been playing around with having like a database, SQL queries, automation to help scrub those chats. Maybe there's a final line in the chat like, thank you for contacting us today, right? And we look for that to be able to indicate our accuracy. So there's a lot of opportunities to automate there too. And machine learning can help. Obviously, we talked a little bit about the semantic network and being able to understand natural language processing. So there's a little bit that we can leverage there, you know? We don't necessarily always have to teach your chatbot that one is one numerical or one spelled out, right? We should have some kind of semantic network there that can help that interaction. And finally, there is still some manual work to do. I mean, going back to the example of the 10,000 chats, right? It's very hard for a human to go through all of those. But we can take samples, you know, we can implement data science and some of the basic statistics here to be able to get an idea of where we stand and where we need to go. So besides that, it is important, I think, as a final note here, to have that human touch. We don't want unsupervised machine learning, right? A great example that I'm sure everyone here knows is Microsoft Hey, where you know, they had this this chatbot on Twitter, and you could talk to it, right? And lo and behold, without that kind of guided learning from humans, the chatbot went crazy and said some things I could probably not repeat here right now. So yeah, there's still some manual work there. We always need that human level of effort. And like Derrick said, we're trying to trim that manual, the laborious work, and we're gonna free up time to do more creative things and find more solutions to your business. So as a final thing, you know, cognitive is always changing, like we've mentioned before. You gotta be prepared to throw your old work out. SOWs are nice, they set your work, but it's always important to do right by the client. If there are features coming out and the industry is changing, you have to stay on top of that. Because if you're not, one of your competitors is, right? So new use cases will always crop up. You know, one of the things we talked about is a ticketing use case. And even though that's table stakes, we can mine that ticket data to find what are the things that people ask for. Are they asking for password resets? Are there any low-hanging fruit that Amelia can take on for the user? And finally, you know, instead of having to reinvent the wheel every time, we have to be prepared to throw some use cases out. We have to build and develop some architectural building blocks so we don't reinvent the wheel every time. Say we have like a purchase order integration with SAP. If we've already built that out, we know how those APIs work. We know what fields and what metadata we use. We're not going to go ahead and do that over and over again, right? So knowledge sharing is really important internally and externally. So essentially, you know you're going to go on the right path with the cognitive platform if both your team and the cognitive platform's learning. So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed.
Yeah, so thanks, Tom. Yeah, so just to wrap up, and if there's any questions, if you guys want to contact us, you can contact us all here. As a side note, IPSoft is growing rapidly and always hiring. So looking for developers, coders, project managers, anything of that sort. So feel free to come grab one of us after the presentation today or at the happy hour, and we'll talk. Any questions in the room before the next presentation? Oh, yes. What is our favorite use? I don't know. Would you guys have a favorite so far? I guess the one that comes to mind for me is any kind of HR use case, like, I mean, because we're talking about enterprise stuff. So having Amelia actually schedule PTO for you, or one of the things I hate personally working with is like Workday or PeopleSoft or any of those. Like I've got to log in and click and check my PTO balance, and then I can submit and go through this whole thing. I just want to be like, I need to take a day off Thursday. You know what I mean? So just being able to say like, take a day off Thursday, tell my boss, that's it. You know, I don't want to have to go click a million times just so I can take the day off, right? Or maybe you wake up that morning and you're sick. Do I really want to log into my computer, get on VPN, do all that? No, just I need to take a day off. I'm sick. Let my boss know. That type of thing. So, guys, anything? Yeah.
I think for me, one of the more interesting things that we've built out, I can't say for what company, but it's for a cruise line. We integrated Amelia with Alexa and used that as a sort of virtual concierge sitting in your room. So you could just ask Amelia, you know, hey, Amelia, give me some champagne. And she'd send an order off, and lo and behold, champagne would show up, you know, some amount of time later in your room. So I thought that was pretty cool.
And I guess I can talk a little bit about what's coming, you know, in the future here too, is, you know, we were talking a little bit about the use case with the video game company and the players that contact us. So we know for a fact that there's a ton of people that contact this company every day that are trying to compromise accounts or trying to hack someone's accounts or get free stuff, right? So going past just, hey, here's this data, here's this person that's suspicious, can your fraud team look into this? We're looking into how can we look at the way that people are writing to us, how often they contact us, where they're contacting us from, and cross-reference this data to find our hackers preemptively, right? So that's gonna be a really exciting area where we start marrying the determinism and the actual digital worker with the analytics piece. So exciting stuff.
Where's the customer interest? Is it messaging, video chat, or?
Yeah. So, I mean, the question was, where's the biggest customer interest? Is it in voice? Is it in chat? Is it in video? Is it on, you know, phone lines, things like that? Increasingly, we're starting to see the interaction go towards chat. So even with a lot of the large enterprise companies, it's surprising to see that many of them don't even have chat platforms internally to communicate. Like they're not even using Jabber or Microsoft Link or any of that stuff, or even Slack, right? So for them, you know, we talk about the concept of digital maturity. Like where are you guys at? Are you still just making phone calls all day? Because if your expectation is that you're going to be able to make a phone call to every chatbot that's out on the planet, then your expectations are in the wrong place, right? Now, we do integrate with landlines and phone lines and things like that, but that requires additional infrastructure and hardware. But I would say you're never going to lose that demographic of people that want to make phone calls, and we understand that. So we're solving for that slice of the pie, but we're also ramping up the chat experience. And for us, as Derrick was showing, it's an omni-channel experience. We don't care if it's Facebook Messenger or Salesforce or ServiceNow chat. We really don't care. It's whatever you're using as a client.